What if I told you I can help you become rarer than a millionaire? Would you believe me? But first, if you lived in New York City, specifically uptown, I'm talking Dykeman, the Heights, north of Mount Eden on the 4 line, north of like 167 on the D line, where there's a bunch of hills. If you got your mail on time last week, you better thank every postal service worker that you see in your family, in your neighborhood, because boy, oh boy, was it hot boots, okay? So if you got your mail on time, thank those service workers for sure. But back to becoming rarer than a millionaire. Point 0.01 to 0.05% of the global population is a published author digitally or on print. And 1 to 1.5% of the population are millionaires. I'm an author of a children's book, of a woman's guide, and I'm in the process of editing my memoir. And what is holding you back from being part of the 0.01% is being part of the 62. So adults globally have at least experienced one traumatic childhood event. And even less, or maybe even more, depending on who you ask and how you ask this, have had compounded traumatic experiences. Leading all of them, these are all adverse childhood experiences. And when we experience these traumatic childhood events, we tend to have a disrupted relationship with how our body speaks to us. And also, depending on your culture, I'm Dominican, a lot of the times your childhood doesn't, and culturally at least, hold the weight and the value that it actually plays out in your adulthood, meaning that it's a little bit of a salad there, but meaning that who and what you are in adulthood, at least culturally for us, whatever happened in your childhood doesn't really matter. That happened, you move on, you become who you are. But we know, obviously, through research, that that's not the case. That who you are is heavily influenced by what you experienced. And here are some of the things that really holds us back because we're part of the 62%, even though a lot of us have the calling of writing your story, the calling of telling your story, the calling of turning that pain into purpose, that trauma into triumph, into storytelling, into connection. A lot of us ignore the calling because, one, we culturally don't value the experiences of children. And we are told that the past is the past. So then we try not to bring it back up because when we write about certain times in our lives that obviously were of adversity or challenging, there are a multitude of characters in there that contributed. It's not just us, right? So we devalue, we minimize, and we pretend like it doesn't have the impact that it does. And we ignore the call. So devaluing your experience. Number two, we think that we have to write about our whole lives. We confuse autobiography for memoir. And you don't have to write about everything. You can choose one thing to write about. And that even of itself feels challenging. And that goes back to sometimes the communication and the way that our body talks to us becomes disrupted because of our experiences. So you think that you have to write about everything, but in reality, you could just write about a certain time in your life. And it doesn't have to be 152 pages. It could be something short, it can be something concise, as long as it's meaningful, impactful, and it's time to be told. And then the third reason that a lot of times, there's many, but the third reason that a lot of the times being part of the 62% having a traumatic childhood holds us back, it's because we think that if we start writing or we bring it up, that it is going to destabilize and our present. So we don't have anything in place to contain that process. And that is completely valid. And we'll go back to the call. Oftentimes, when we hear the call to write, to tell a story, it's because our body is telling us that it's ready. Our body is telling us that there's space now. And it can be difficult because we want to do what we want to do. Our body can seem very inconvenient to many of us. And not only our body, but even a creative pursuit can be perceived as very inconvenient. But if you leave with anything here, is that a creative pursuit is a pleasurable pursuit. And a pleasurable and a creative pursuit is medicine. You know that something a lot of the times is good for you to pursue because you feel a little nervousness, but you also know that the process and the time is going to lead to something profoundly gratifying and pleasurable. So if you just learn how to write it out, or you understand that you need community, whether it's a writing community, whether it's a coach like myself or somebody else, that you can go the mile, you can go the distance that it takes for you to be with your body, to heed the calling, and produce something into the world that is not only going to heal you. I always say that writing saved my life. There's no other comprehensive format of somatic healing than writing, in my complete opinion. Except, well, when you couple that with theater, but that's another video. But needless to say, or reading your work out loud, needless to say that a lot of us are living with childhood memories and experiences that have matured and need to be picked and pulled out of us and produced outside of us to be given back to the world as fruit, as medicine. And through my own work, through the children's book, through the guide for women, which is pinned on my grid, and the memoir that I'm working on now, that I'm very excited to take all of you on that process and what that means to gather that. I lost my train of thought, but when we pick and we listen to the calling and we pick those matured stories at the right time to put them out into the world as medicine, there is no more profound healing than that. That it's outside of you, it's doing work outside of you, it's healing and connecting with others, and it allows you to move forward in life as an adult who actually responded to the child in you. You become the adult that you didn't have through your writing and through putting it out there. So instead of just being part of the 62%, you become part of the less than 1% of the world that has published not just any book, but a part of your story. So you ready to become rarer than a millionaire or not?